Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. Here's what I'm going to show you today. This is an Epiphone, and this is a Les Paul Junior. Now I believe this started out as a 57 reissue, but as you can see it's been modified. It has a P90 in the bridge position and an extra switch that shouldn't be there. So it's going to be interesting to take a look at this. Sort of have to take it with a grain of salt. It's obviously not a factory original guitar. So let's get started. Okay, here we go. So here's the Epiphone headstock. We see it's the older style with the horns cut off. And the word Epiphone looks to be painted on as opposed to an inlay. Now it says Junior there. And it has the Epiphone E on the truss rod cover. All in all, the headstock looks pretty good for a budget guitar. And here's a look at the back. Now we see they've replaced the tuners with Shaler style. These look like no name and they look really sort of cheap. But they seem to hold it in tune well and they feel good. Now this guitar has the Epiphone Custom Shop limited edition logo. And that's a logo I never really put too much weight behind. I sort of think for some reason most of the Epiphones of that time period had that logo. So I don't think it's like it came out of some custom shop somewhere where they were just pouring all their attention onto one guitar. But that said, it's pretty cool. Now this is the Rosewood fingerboard, and we can see it's actually a pretty nice slab of rosewood. I'm kind of impressed with that. Nice and dark, it's not dry, feels great. Now the carve on this neck is actually, I would say, a shallow D carve. So maybe more like a 60s carve than a 57, which is sort of interesting. But the frets are finished really well. I don't know if that's factory or if somebody's sort of modified that as well. But it feels great. This is a guitar I could put a lot of hours on. Now we follow it up here to the neck joint, and we see it is actually a bolt-on. So not one of the higher end Epiphones by any means. I'm not sure if all the juniors were bolt-ons, but there's the Epiphone neck plate. I noticed there is a finish crack in here, as you sometimes see with a bolt-on, and it's fairly substantial. It doesn't bother me because I know it's sort of superficial, but it's worth note. Probably somebody's tightened these a little much, or just from the factory. That's sort of a little pressure point if it's too tight here. So here is a look at the front of this guitar. Now we see right away, we can tell there's been modification. This has a P90, a 57 reissue normally would have no pickup in the bridge position. So they've cut this to fit and they've added a switch. Now they did a pretty good job. You wouldn't tell straight out away. But once you look a little closer, this is not a factory route. It's fairly clean, but not great. And there's what I'm assuming is the original pickup, but it could be changed as well. Now the tailpiece, interestingly, they've swapped that as well. This one, you can set the intonation. I believe on the stock 57 reissue, it would be just a stop tailpiece with no adjustment. So that's pretty cool. Now the way they've done this, there's no volume control, so that's interesting. It doesn't affect me because I play cranked on 10 all the time anyway. But it looks like they've got a tone for each pickup. So that's interesting. When I do some sound samples, I'll switch between them and label which is which. And through the TV yellow paint, we can see it looks like it's a mahogany body. I'm assuming it's solid mahogany. It doesn't look like it's plywood. And it certainly has a nice feel. Despite being a cheapish Epiphone and a bolt-on, and all the flaws that I could find with this guitar, it still feels great in hand. And this is a guitar I would definitely play a fair bit. Anyway, let's give it a listen. Cheers.